Welcome to this meeting of the Selectmen's Licensing Review Committee. We're here tonight to have a public hearing. I know on our agenda there's some housekeeping matters, approval of minutes from previous meeting, and one other discussion matter. We've decided to continue those until our regular meeting, which is actually scheduled for 8:30 tomorrow morning. So we're going to jump right into the public hearing part of this evening. I want to just let everybody know that what we're here to discuss is proposed limitations and conditions that will be submitted by this committee to the Board of Selectmen as they consider the license application of NETA for a marijuana dispensary facility. Conversely stated, we're not here to rehash the general ideas about whether a medical marijuana dispensary in Brookline is a good thing or a bad thing. We're not here to talk about the substance that was the subject of two warrant articles before the last two town meetings about zoning implications and zoning requirements for a medical marijuana dispensary. We're here to talk about conditions, and hopefully we're here to talk about reasonable conditions and conditions that we can legally implement and not conditions that are beyond the scope of what a town can do. So having said that, I'd like to turn the microphone over to my co-chair, Selectman DeWitt, who has prepared a short PowerPoint presentation to bring us up to date.
Right, and this is literally just an overview to get us all to the topic that we're really here for, which is about licensing conditions. Worked. All right, so this is what Selectman Goldstein was mentioning. We voted to have medical marijuana in 2012. The Department of Public Health enacted its regulations in 2013. Brookline in 2013 amended bylaws to add registered marijuana license holders to our criminal records check so that they will all go through a CORI check. We amended the bylaws to establish licensing and regulation for registered marijuana dispensaries, and we amended our bylaws to add zoning for a licensed marijuana dispensary. Also in 2013, the Federal Department of Justice issued a guidance regarding marijuana enforcement, recommending prosecutorial discretion in states where there are strong and effective laws and regulations in place for the use of medical marijuana. And also, in response to a Brookline resident's request, Carmen Ortiz, the U.S. Attorney for Massachusetts, wrote, "We intend to scrutinize any medical marijuana dispensary that poses an increased risk for distribution of marijuana to minors, whether the dispensary is greater or less than 1,000 feet from a school." And that's literally to say we anticipate that we will be in a partnership with the state in terms of oversight and making sure that this establishment is a safe one. Then in 2014, the Selectmen also approved regulations for a registered marijuana establishment for a dispensary. And also in 2014, the Department of Public Health granted a provisional license to New England Treatment Access, who will be the RMD in Brookline, and with whom we have been in conversations about the proposals for licensing, and I'm sure they will want to speak in response or even to make comments later on this evening. We've worked closely with our legal department, our health department, the police, the fire department, the planning department, the building department, and transportation to draft these conditions that have been distributed. I hope everybody's got them. We are optimistic that we have addressed most of the concerns that will come up later. Tonight, we're hoping to hear comments about the licensing conditions. And just for everybody's information, tomorrow night, the Planning Board will be reviewing the special permit request at 7:30 p.m. downstairs on the first floor in room 111. which is the zoning component of this licensing process. And just sort of the committee's approach to this is that the dispensary is a facility that's somewhere between a medical office and a pharmacy. It will be licensed to dispense a Schedule I controlled substance, namely marijuana. And unlike derivatives of opiates, a controlled substance doesn't have a physician's desk reference as a guide for prescriptions. The state, however, recommends a manual that's been put together in Canada where medical marijuana has been legal for 16 years, and there's been officially sanctioned clinical research. In Massachusetts, several clinical studies are beginning to look at the use of cannabis derivatives for the treatment of glaucoma and epileptic seizures, and there are a number of pharmaceutical companies who are also looking into cannabis derivatives for medical purposes. Just for everybody's information, because people may be aware of this, there are a couple of articles in the March 12th issue of the New England Journal of Medicine that raise questions about the safety of edible products. And I want to make it clear that it's important to make a distinction between medical marijuana and recreational marijuana. And many of the concerns have to do with the packaging of recreational products that have been distributed in Canada. And in fact, Canada has, in February of this year, adopted regulations that require written disclosures regarding safe serving and recognizing the risks of the use of recreational marijuana. Just so that we are clear, we're talking about medical marijuana. And finally, there's, just for everybody's information, whatever this is worth, AAA has published statistics indicating that the THC from marijuana is the second most common substance after alcohol found in the blood of individuals who have been impaired or who have been injured in traffic accidents. And so one of our concerns will be that people are sufficiently aware that there is a possible intoxicating component even to medical marijuana. Having said that, we've established fees. This is the application fee and an annual licensing fee. Be aware that we are restricted to our fees based on the cost of the program. So those numbers have been calculated by our financial people. The the licensing committee will be making a recommendation to the selectmen who will probably approve the final licensing conditions sometime in the next month or so. The planning board will make an equal timely recommendation on zoning conditions that will go to the Zoning Board of Appeals. And I already mentioned that they're meeting tomorrow night. Whoops. Backwards. All right. And these are the issues that we are going to be thinking about. There will be a reporting requirement. At the moment, I think we're talking about number of visits, products dispensed, home deliveries, financial statements, and patient satisfaction. There may be others. With regard to safety and security, there will be unannounced inspections. We will have control over signage and visitor access. There will be security cameras. There will be traffic monitoring, and there will be a transportation demand management agreement, and we will monitor compliance with that. And finally, the issues having to do with public health have to do with the quality control, edibles content, packaging. Can I get that higher? I don't know. Maybe
No,
not.
it's part of the,
Oops.
it says outcome measures.
Yeah, and the final thing is outcome measures, which we consider to be very important. And we're definitely hoping that there will be folks who will come forward and be interested in some clinical research in partnership with our RMD in the town. So having said that.
Thank you, Selectman DeWitt. A couple of quick items before we invite your comment. The first is everybody should know that this hearing is being televised. It's also being recorded, so it's being televised on Brookline, Brookline Interactive Group or Brookline Access Television. So speak up loud into the microphone and smile pretty for the camera. And then we're also making our own audio recording of the proceeding as well, as we do every meeting. Ground rules for speaking are, we have sign-in sheets. They're outside from time to time. I'll make sure somebody goes out to check to see that there aren't some new names added to the list. And I'm going to call them just in the order that they're on the list presented to me. And every speaker, we got a 5-minute maximum. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hold up my 3 fingers when you're 3 minutes into your presentation. So that means you've been speaking for 3 minutes, not you have 3 minutes left. I'll then hold up 5 fingers when you're 5 minutes into the presentation, and that means you've been speaking for 5 minutes. It also means stop. So we have quite a few people want to speak. Right. And if everybody would begin by just stating your name, even though I'm going to call your name, state your name and your home address for the record so that we have a good record of who's here and where they hail from. First name on the list. Anything further from committee members before I open it up? First name I have is Barbara Hatfield, and Barbara, come right up. And I'm going to always announce like an on-deck person too. Jean Sorrow is the next person I have. If Jean would line up right behind. Every time I name the next speaker, I'm going to name who the on-deck person is. Ms. Hatfield, you have 5 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Barbara Hatfield. I live at 85 Rockview Street, unit number 2 in Jamaica Plain. In 1992, I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, a nervous system disorder that causes chronic deep aches and burning pain throughout my body, cramping and knots in my muscles, chronic fatigue, headaches, cognitive difficulties, and increasing allergies. I never know from one day to the next whether I will feel well enough to accomplish daily chores or to follow through on plans with friends. My hobbies, recreational and volunteer activities are extremely restricted. This condition led to my early retirement 11 years ago. Doctors prescribed dozens of medications over the years, from muscle relaxants to anti-seizure drugs to antidepressants and opiates. But these caused me debilitating side effects and allergic reaction, such as severe hives and swelling of my hands and my feet. As a senior citizen, I finally have found a medicine that works and helps me to live a better life. That medicine is medical marijuana, and it provides relief from fibromyalgia without debilitating side effects and allergic reactions. When I have access to medical marijuana, I can fulfill my responsibilities at home, enjoy social activities, and pursue hobbies, such as attending art classes at the Museum
Ms.
of
Hatfield,
Fine Arts.
can I interrupt you for just a moment
Sure.
here? Because you're a minute and a half into your speech, and so far you're talking about the merits of medical marijuana,
Okay,
and that's what I want to try to avoid. I want to talk about the conditions and the proper types of restrictions and conditions that we should be thinking about here.
Presently, I don't have safe and reliable access to this medicine. Thankfully, that will change when dispensaries open, such as the one in Brookline Village, and I very much appreciate the work of the Board of Selectmen in this regard. And I hope you will adopt sensible regulations so that the dispensary can finally open for the many patients who need it. I am here this evening to represent those who stand to benefit from the dispensary, people such as myself who cannot take existing prescription drugs. We are desperate for safe access to medical marijuana in the form that is best for each of us. How we take our medicine is very important to us. I prefer not to smoke, but rather to take my medicine in edible form, which I have found to be very effective. I want to emphasize that, like prescription drugs, I believe doctors, in consultation with their patients, should determine the dosage for edibles, rather than through permitting regulations. Thank you for the opportunity to express my views. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
No, I think we're all set. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jean Sorrow, and then Nicole Snow is next.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Again, my name is Jean Sorrow. I'm a resident of Franklin, Massachusetts. I am a graduate of the Northeastern Institute of Cannabis in Natick. I am a stage 3 breast cancer survivor and a medical marijuana user. I've studied this plant extensively. My mind has been completely blown by the information that I've learned, what an amazing plant it is in medicine, and I use it for pain, and hopefully it will. What I've learned is it may restrict my cancer from reactivating. I have to travel 2 hours up and 2 hours back to Maine to go to a dispensary to get my medicine. And it's hard for me to do that, and I'm a healthy person. People who are sick, who have MS and AIDS and cancer and all kinds of problems, they're forced to continue to go to the black market because, it's been, 2.5 years since the voters in Massachusetts voted to legalize medical marijuana, and we still don't have anything open. Excuse me?
Excuse me.
No,
Excuse me.
nothing's open yet.
Excuse me. Let's keep comments quiet and focus on the person at the podium, please.
So, I'm here to testify that, I'm a normal person. I'm trying to take care of my health. I use medical marijuana. I'm not a stoner. It works for me. I'm a big advocate of it. I know Charlie Baker personally. I went to high school with him. I've been talking to him on a personal level. He understands that we need to get these medical marijuana dispensaries open. I think the state has done an excellent job. Maybe they've gone, way above and beyond with the regulations and rules, to ensure the safety. I understand, and, whoever I talk to, they always bring up the issue of children getting access to it. Well, I just want to say that concerning that, ask yourself this question. Would you rather have an illegal system where you have drug dealers on the street selling to our children? They don't care how old our kids are. All they care about is that you get the money. They're selling other harder drugs, and no one knows what's in what they're selling.
You've been speaking
Okay.
3 minutes.
Oh,
Please
sorry.
start to wrap up. And
Or
again, I want to say what I said to the last speaker, too. I really wish you were talking about the conditions and not making arguments for medical marijuana or against
like,
medical marijuana.
what do you mean conditions?
Well, that's the purpose.
Distributed drafts, which you apparently have not seen.
Yeah, we have a.
Oh, I got a copy of it.
Well, that's
before
what we're soliciting input
Yeah.
on is
Oh.
not the pros and cons of medical marijuana. We're not revisiting the merits of the
Right,
the
okay,
legislation.
I understand.
We're trying to focus on the conditions that have been proposed, which ones sound good, which ones that sound like too much, which other ones
Oh.
might be proposed as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I'm kind of
This is for everybody, not for you.
right. No, I understand. But I mean, I hear from you and I see in the presentation that the concern about children is a big thing, and I agree with it. And I think by having a regulated system, a heavily regulated system, it's going to keep it, it's going to ensure that it's kept out of the, away from the kids. You have to go to a heavily regulated dispensary, you have to show a card, a medical marijuana card. You have to be 21 years of age or older to buy it, and I'm very frustrated because, people need their medicine. And, I think everybody's been working in the best interests of the public, but we really need to move this forward now. This has been going on long enough, and we need to get these dispensaries open as soon as possible.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Nicole Snow, and then we have Steve, it looks like Steve Sailing after that.
Good evening. My name is Nicole Snow. I am from Salem, Massachusetts, 190 Bridge Street. I am the Deputy Director of Massachusetts Patients Advocacy Alliance. The Massachusetts Patient Advocacy Alliance is a coalition of medical marijuana patients, their family members, medical professionals, and public health groups advocating for safe access to medical marijuana for patients with a doctor's recommendation. MPAA backed the 2012 Medical Marijuana Ballot Initiative and since been working with patients to make sure they have a voice in implementation. MPAA represents patients in Brookline suffering from multiple sclerosis, severe chronic pain, cancer, and other serious illnesses who have voiced their need for medical marijuana dispensaries in their community so that they can safely access their medicine. I am a medical marijuana patient. Because of my intolerance to harsh pharmaceuticals that injured me, causing a blood clot in my left leg, my doctor no longer recommends that I use those prescriptions. In 2001, I was rear-ended and my head and shoulder hit the windshield of my car and subsequently hyperextended my neck, the joints and muscles in my neck. In January 2013, my car was rear-ended a second time, my ribs were bruised, and I experienced whiplash. MPAA commends the officials of Brookline for putting in place sensible local regulations so that patients like myself and patients of Brookline can get their medicine we need. Brookline should be proud to be on the forefront of developing a truly public health-based dispensary system that will help patients suffering from ALS, cancer, HIV/AIDS, MS, etc. As a leader in healthcare research and medical innovation, Massachusetts has the opportunity to create a medical marijuana program that the rest of the country will follow. I am concerned about over-regulation through permitting process. While measures to prevent diversion are appropriate to include local regulations, decisions about administration and dosages should be left to the patients and doctors. Some patients need a higher dose, particularly those dealing with severe pain who are trying to reduce the use of toxic and addictive drugs such as opiates. Allison Jones is a patient that often speaks for MPAA at the State House. She is from Rutland, Mass. Though she's not from Brookline, her story would exemplify a patient experiencing pain that needs to confide and consult with her doctor about medical marijuana dosages. Allison is a nurse who is now disabled. She is a good Samaritan who stopped to help someone out of an overturned Subaru after a traffic accident. The Subaru was then hit by a bus and flipped on top of her. Allison sustained over a dozen fractures and now has steel pins in her hip, neck, and collarbone, leading to a life of severe pain. She was prescribed a list of these medications: OxyContin, Vicodin, Vicodin ES, Percocet, MS-Contin, morphine, Dilaudid, fentanyl, codeine, tramadol, hydromorphone, hydrocodone, Soma, Neurontin, Lyrica, Zofran, Flexeril, Scalexin, Baclofen, cyclophenazepam, methocarbamol, Xanax, and Celebrex. With actually one week after using Celebrex, she resulted in kidney failure. That's 23 medications. Allison felt like a zombie and could not be a grandmother that she wanted to be. Using medical marijuana edibles, she was able to get all of those drugs and get her life back. But something as small as a 10-milligram dose would not work for her. She is one of many patients who needs to get more into her system to get the greatest benefit of medical marijuana. Our position at MPAA is that the decisions on administration and dosages should be made between the doctors and patients, and not through a local permitting process. So, what I'm saying is I'm encouraging that we do not restrict those dosages here in the licensing process, and that we leave that between the patient and doctor. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening.
I would like to clarify a fact, and that is the doctor will not make a prescription.
Oh.
The doctor will make a referral.
Thank you.
And the patient will go to the dispensary. There is no doctor prescription involved in this process whatsoever.
And I actually appreciate you saying that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Saling and Eddie Benjamin, you're after Mr. Saling.
Can we take it off the?
My
time.
name is Steve Sailing, and for the last 9 years, I have been living with a condition known as ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease. Last summer, there was this little thing called the Ice Bucket Challenge, so I no longer get blank stares when I tell people that ALS is a neurodegenerative condition that is slowly killing the motor nerves that control my voluntary muscles. This has led to my obvious paralysis, and is the reason I am talking to you through a computer, my only voice for about 6 years now. Out of respect for the board, I will cut to the chase. I am terribly worried that the law is being undermined by a small minority who base their opposition on fear instead of the facts. I have a son who is 8 years old, so I understand the need to protect children from taking medication they shouldn't, and accept as my responsibility, as a good parent, to do just that. I am concerned that in the name of protecting children, there are proposals that would render my medication worthless. As my ALS progresses, it becomes increasingly difficult for me to eat. My chewing and swallowing muscles get weaker, the same as my arm and leg muscles have gotten weaker. I don't even know what 10 milligrams is, but, for example, if my doctor recommends 100 milligrams, that would mean I would have to eat 10 brownies at a time. That could literally kill me. If you are truly concerned about children eating brownies, there are many easier ways to do that than forcing me to ingest copious amounts of medicine. If you want kids to spit out medical brownies, making them gluten-free should do it. My point is that no one in this room can possibly understand the delicate balance I strike to lead a vital and productive life. The amount of cannabis I consume and the method of consumption is worked out between me and my doctor. With respect, I say that no one in this room has a legitimate right to intervene. Please don't let people frighten you into passing regulations that would force me to live a life of pain. I am embarrassed that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts puts politics ahead of the well-being of its citizens. The madness must end, and I hope Brookline will lead the way. I appreciate the honor of speaking to you this evening. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Saley. Eddie Benjamin is going to pass, and so I have Suzanne, and I'm sorry, Suzanne, but your last name, it looks like Schaefer, maybe? Schaffner. Please
Oh,
come
that was
forward.
close.
Pretty close. And Lisa Barstow, you're next. After Suzanne. You're up now.
My name is Suzanne Schaffner. I live at 185 Freeman Street in Brookline. I've lived in Brookline since 1980. I raised my 3 children here in Brookline. My son became really addicted to drugs at Brookline High School, and it was a nightmare. And the smartest member of my family, my son, barely graduated from high school. Now he is a healthy, wonderful man at 44 years old. And he got through that. When I bought my condo on Washington Street here in Brookline, anyway, I kicked my son out of the house. I did all kinds of things to fight drugs and through the 60s, 70s, 80s, whatever. I knew people that smoked pot, but I never did. I never touched a drug. So I was very anti-drug. And when the kids were smoking pot on the roof of my building, I called the police. When I found paraphernalia on the steps of my building, I called the police. And in 1991, I got multiple sclerosis. And only after many, many years, I was desperate. And I was terrified of marijuana. And I got some, and I asked a friend. to come and be with me because I had no idea what effect it would have on me. And I was truly terrified. Unfortunately, I have to buy marijuana illegally, which is not a pleasant thing for me to do because I really believe in laws and really want to obey them. But I'm in tremendous pain. My muscles are very stiff. Sometimes it's very hard for me to walk. I only smoke marijuana when I'm in bed at night. I'm never driving. And I know that this is not what really about the subject you wanted to hear about tonight, but I deeply appreciate the opportunity to speak my voice and advocate for especially people with neurological disease. And if you've never had a neurological problem, you have no idea what it is because your neurological function is functioning fine, so you don't feel it, you don't know anything about it. But it's the computer that runs your whole body. And when that's not working right and sending you messages that are not real, it's a really tough thing. So I thank you very much for your time, and I hope that Brookline will be the first place in Massachusetts that will have a dispensary. And my neurologist at Beth Israel will write me a prescription. I guess I don't need one.
You need a referral.
Well, she'll give me a referral, and my psychiatrist will tell me exactly what type of components of marijuana are best for me. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Lisa Barstow, and then Andy Gauss after that.
Good evening, Lisa Barstow, 231 Washington Street. I will speak solely about the licensing issue as has been requested.
Thank you.
First, I would like to say that I think that most of Brookline voted for medical marijuana because the expectation is that it would be sold in a pharmacy-type setting. And I think that Newton's model has gotten it pretty close to right, and that is to set limits on the amount permitted to a single ounce per purchase, and to require delivery for all customers after the first in-person visit, and that visits be by appointment only. That is the Newton model. Brookline could vary off that, but I think that that's a good starting place. Also, as an abutting neighbor, I'm very concerned about the hours of operation, clearly. Another issue that concerns me is the labeling of the edibles, and that labeling be very clear and transparent. Certainly the FDA requires labeling on products, even, fast food, Starbucks, et cetera, is now required to provide fat, calorie information on its products. I don't know whether and how edibles will be required to label fat and calories, but most importantly, levels of THC. So that's something that I'm very concerned about, and I think that certainly we really need to take a strong look at. And finally, with legislation filed already in the state legislature, and a planned ballot question in 2016 to legalize marijuana for recreational use, I think that town officials need to look with a very critical and thoughtful eye that, within the short term, there is a reasonable likelihood that what is now medicinal marijuana could become recreational marijuana, so that as you set licensing limits, they are limits that could reasonably transfer to something that could then become lawful in the recreational realm. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We have Andy Gauss next, and then George Vian.
Thank you for your opportunity to speak. One thing that I would say about, I'd like to say a couple of things about what regulations are appropriate in general, and also address a couple of the specific things that are here. I will be talking about regulations and licensing. That will probably make everyone happy. Basically, we have two models of experience to draw from, alcohol and cigarettes. Alcohol taxes are low, and the regulations aren't too entirely elaborate as to how it may be transported or held or sold. And the result is that we don't have a lot of stills and moonshine and speakeasies in Massachusetts. Cigarettes, on the other hand, we have decided are the worst of all sins, and we've imposed the greatest of all sin taxes. And the result is that we have a lot of bootleg cigarettes being imported from other states with lower taxes. A couple of people who have done estimates by counting empty cigarette packs have concluded that in Boston maybe about 40% of the market is bootleg cigarettes. In short, medical marijuana should replace at least part of the black market. It should be, patients who need it should want to buy at dispensaries. They should not have a giant impulse to keep buying from the black market. And the way that you do that is that you don't load on too many taxes and licensing fees and regulations that are onerous to comply with, because in so doing, you're driving up the cost of legal marijuana and making black market marijuana more attractive. Now, as to the specific regulations, I notice number 10, home delivery shall not originate from the dispensary. I think that's a particularly bad idea.
Just to be clear, the dispensary, there will be deliveries, but they have to be from the manufacturing source, which in this case, because of our particular RMD, will be Franklin, Massachusetts.
Or it could be from any other location.
Right,
just not
but
Brookline.
it will not, there will be no manufacturing done on site. It will simply be like a pharmacy where things are dispensed.
Right.
So things will come to the site in Brookline and be distributed from there, but not delivered. If they're delivered, they'll come from the production source.
I'd like to hear the gentleman's criticism.
Yeah, I must admit that still seems to me like a bad idea.
Okay.
You should encourage home delivery, and it makes more sense for things to be delivered in bulk to Brookline, and then if there's a bunch of local deliveries made, to make them all from a hub in Brookline rather than make each one a trip from Franklin, which...
That's not how it would work, but go ahead.
All right.
You've been speaking for 3 minutes. You
Okay.
got 2 minutes left.
Also 11, measures relating to lighting, alarms, fencing, gates, delivery procedures, and police details. Those are things where it's tempting to pile on. Those are things where it's tempting to create an awful lot of expenses that look good but don't really protect anyone and except the black market. In general, marijuana is a drug, and it should be handled with care, but so is alcohol. And in making your regulations, I would ask you to say, would this be so terribly necessary if this was, medicinal wine or alcohol used for medicinal purposes? Do you need to finish your first bottle of wine before you can buy another bottle of wine? Normally, no. I would ask you to consider everything in that light, and that's enough. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, sir. George Vian, you're up, and then Gordon Bennett on deck.
My name is George Vian. I live at 60 Davis Avenue in Brookline. I grew up in Brookline, lived here most of my life. I have 2 points that have to do with licensing. Both address my concern about the lack of transparency with NETA and the various associated entities. First, as far as financial disclosure, I respectfully request that you require full financial disclosure, meaning tracking every penny that comes in the door and everywhere it flows. And if it flows to an entity, including an LLC or a nonprofit, full disclosure of all membership and ownership interests in the entity receiving the money so that people of Brookline can track what's going on. Second is full disclosure of the ownership of the Brookline Bank building. Brookline Bank building is held in an LLC, Washington 160 LLC. If I asked you, aside from the people from NETA, I don't think anyone in the room could tell you who are the members of that LLC. The manager of the LLC is a man named Billy Tebow. I would like full disclosure regarding his criminal and environmental record. Look at him. Look at the man you're bringing into Brookline to manage this building, and look at his track record of what he did in other communities and the way he treated those communities. And until you know that, I respectfully suggest you cannot fashion appropriate conditions because you do not know with whom you are dealing. So those are my 2 points. I've tried to limit them to the licensing issues that are before you tonight, and I respectfully request that you require all other speakers to limit their comments to the licensing issues.
Thank you. Gordon Bennett and then Timothy Naimi. You could speak right into the microphone, please.
I think that mic's not very.
Good evening. My name is Gordon Bennett, and I live at 55 Davis Avenue. Chairman Goldstein, following the Article 12 vote on the RMD zoning after the fall town meeting, you told me, quote, "Don't worry, we're going to regulate the H out of them." I will say, these proposed regulations are a good start. But I believe they can be improved.
By the way.
I believe they can be improved in 4 ways. 1, and this reemphasizes the point George Vian just made, NETA should be required to fully disclose its audited financials, including financial packages of all directors, managers, and outside management consultants and contracts. It is organized as a nonprofit and is granted certain privileges, including exemption from local and state taxes. Furthermore, it was granted one of the 35 coveted RMD licenses. It doesn't pay local taxes.
I don't think that's true.
They're not a 501c3, and just to be clear, they do have to pay some taxes.
I said, did not say federal. They don't have to pay state taxes, income taxes. If you're right, I didn't say federal.
Yeah, but you said they didn't have to pay taxes. I'm trying to be
I
clear about
didn't
it.
say local and state taxes is what I said. If you let me finish the sentence, that's what I said, and that's the truth. I didn't say federal. Unfortunately, NETA does not have a good history of financial transparency. As you may be aware, its former CEO, Kevin Fisher, arranged a special deal with current NETA management in which 18% of the revenues off the top were shuttled to his for-profit company, regardless if NETA showed a surplus or not. Given the financials shown in NETA's DPH application, this would have completely drained any surplus that would have otherwise been available for the public interest. NETA should not become a piggy bank for its founders and directors. Full disclosure of financials will help reduce that possibility and increase public trust. 1. 2, regarding operations, I have previously publicly argued for a 100% delivery model to mitigate almost all the local impact issues. I understand now that that's not possible. In lieu of that, I think we should adopt our neighbor Newton's requirement of customer service on an appointment-only basis. This, paired with Newton's limit of in-store purchases of 1 ounce, will achieve most of the goals of the 100% delivery model. This is true for 2 reasons. 1, pragmatically, Newton is our neighbor, has the nearest approved RMD, and has adopted these regulations. If Brookline adopts anything less stringent, it will drive traffic here, exacerbating local impact issues here. And 2, an appointment-only model will alleviate traffic and parking issues by definition, as a site's capacity for parking in terms of car spaces and sales in terms of sales desks is a known number. Doctors use appointments successfully. Car mechanics use appointments successfully. NETA can too. I read NETA's traffic demand management plan as well as their Stantec traffic study. While I do not disagree with their analysis, I disagree with their assumptions. Working backwards, they're assuming NETA will draw from a population pool of 170,000 people. That may be true when there are 10 RMDs operating in the Boston area, but that is simply not true now. Depending upon the timing of Brookline, Newton, and anything in Boston, which is further behind schedule than we are now, depending upon the timing of opening of RMDs, NETA's population pool is likely to be 3 or 4 times as large as what's assumed in the traffic study. Brookline should proceed cautiously from the start and be proactive in stopping problems before they start rather than reacting to them after they have occurred. As for the 1 ounce in-store purchase limit, one of the main critiques of the DPH regulations is that they interpret the ballot question's 2 ounce supply to mean 10 dried ounces. Just as 10 ounces of Bud Light is not the same as 10 ounces of French Bordeaux or 10 ounces of a Kentucky Moonshine, 10 ounces of different strains of marijuana can have very different potencies of THC, which is a psychoactive component of marijuana. 2 days ago, NBC News published an article stating that Colorado's legal bud had concentrations of 18.7%. The piece quotes Andy Lafrette, president of Charcas Scientific, whose lab was licensed by the state to test the THC strength. Quote, these samples are representational of what's happening here in the state and probably across the country because most of the new states coming online with medical or retail marijuana have people from Colorado coming in to establish those markets. Assuming a lower 15% potency, 1 ounce of dried marijuana is enough to produce 420 10-milligram dosages. To put this in perspective, the world-renowned Mayo Clinic recommends 1 10-milligram dosage per day for patients suffering from ALS. In other words, that's enough marijuana for over a 1-year supply or 1 month supply for a customer who took 14 times the recommended amount. Reading through the minutes of the January 29th meeting of the LRC, it is clear that there is confusion around this issue. NETA's own numbers in the DPH application imply an average customer purchase of 0.64 ounces. 1 dried ounce is more than enough. If a tincture or oil is purchased, the amount equivalent to 1 dried ounce should be the limit for that too. As with Newton, if the customer wants to purchase any more, the rest should be home delivered. Limiting the purchase quantity will reduce the likelihood of local diversion and diminish the risk of crime, drugs, and cash in the area. And on home delivery, it should be required for any customer who asks it, not simply for hardship cases. I have one more point I would politely request
Can
if
you
you
do
hear
it
me.
about 20 seconds?
Can I finish the last point? Thank you.
Quickly, please.
4, Brookline should limit the sale of medibles to oils and butter and prohibit the sale of all ready-to-eat food. There are already many well-documented cases in Colorado of children accidentally ingesting medibles and ending up in the emergency room. Furthermore, while smoking in public is prohibited, eating will be much more difficult to police. Lastly, the impact of THC consumed by marijuana and vaping is nearly immediate, allowing for customers to quickly realize the effect of the marijuana. In contrast, the impact of THC in the body is delayed with ingestion. This makes it difficult to judge whether one has consumed too little or too much until it's too late. By prohibiting the sale of such items, Brookline will reduce the likelihood of accidental ingestion, reduce the possibility of people getting high in public, and help customers regulate the drug's impact.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Timothy Naimi and then Julie Vian.
Good evening. My name is Tim Naimi. I'm a resident of Craftsman Road. I'm a physician. I'm an internist and a pediatrician, and I'm also a researcher in the area of substance abuse policy and regulations. So, I appreciate the testimony of patients here, but, the real issue is not whether there's going to be medical marijuana or whether there should be medical marijuana. It's the appropriate regulation of that medical marijuana. Unfortunately, to people who know anything about substance use policy, the DPH regulations are a joke, and everyone knows it. And they were written with heavy lobbying from industry or those who soon join industry. Going into all the deficiencies of their regulations is beyond the scope of this hearing and at this late hour, but to pick up on the point of others, the most important thing in substance abuse policy is the dose. And the Massachusetts notorious 10-ounce limit is a de facto possession limit in 60 days that amounts to, for about standard sort of 5% THC marijuana, which was sort of what I had growing up, about 11 joints per day, or 15%, which is now closer to the average, up to 30 joints a day. Of course, no patient is going to use this amount of marijuana, but a tailor-made situation for diversion, for economic profit, or to sell to others, or to give to others. So really, it's this large excess supply in the system that permits larger availability, which drives down prices and permits resale. Massachusetts, this 10-ounce in 60 days limit amounts to 3.75 pounds per year of dried product. As I mentioned, it's more than any other state in which marijuana has not been legalized. By comparison, Colorado's medical program has a possession limit of 2 ounces, not 10 ounces. And indeed, Massachusetts' program allows for possession of about 5 times as much as most other states with a medical program. So, that's, I think, is the most emblematic of what's going on with the state. The licensing process was a nice opportunity for the state not to bar medical marijuana, but to institute the kind of safeguards that could have made the Massachusetts program far more successful and far less dangerous than most experts predict it will be. But instead, we're subject to this literally 11th hour meeting. Yeah?
You've been speaking for 3 minutes. You have 2 minutes left.
Thank you. That is obviously very pro forma in nature and, is frankly a cynical attempt to fulfill a requirement. So I have to say, shame on our town for a lost public health opportunity, and shame on the board for this process, which I don't think is sincere. And that's all I have to say, and thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, sir. Julie Vian, and then Juliet Eastland after that.
I'm Julia Vian. I live at 60 Davis Avenue. I just wanted to point out the one thing here, number 5, the licensee's operations shall not result in illegal redistribution under state or local law of medical marijuana obtained from the licensee or in use of medical marijuana in any manner that violates state or local law. And I want to know how on earth you can possibly ensure that this doesn't happen with, as soon as the marijuana leaves the place, they can go and resell it wherever they want. It's been documented that in other states this happens routinely. And, I think the location and the amount that you're allowing people to buy is just setting us up for this kind of situation. And I don't think that any amount of regulation of lighting or police or, employee parking is going to affect that fundamental fact about what you're doing here. And, employee parking off-site is still not going to mitigate the parking issue either. So that's all I want to say.
Thank you. And Juliet Eastland, and then Marilise. And Patty, that's all I've got.
Okay, good.
Good evening. I'm Juliet Eastland. I'm at 58 Davis Avenue. And I want to also address what a couple other speakers have addressed in terms of diversion and labeling and the licensing issues around those. I think there's a bit of a fantasy here about the distinction between medical and marijuana, not in terms of medical users, but in terms of what happens, as other people have said, once it gets out the door. And I know that the punishment for selling medical marijuana, I think, is higher. I think it's a felony. But that's a lovely thought. That is not going to deter, for instance, teenagers who are determined, if they're determined to get their hands on pot, and their impulse control is not fully formed, their brains are not fully formed. Distinctions like that aren't going to matter. Of course, there will be diversion. Every study that has been shown in Colorado and California, the ones I've read, acknowledge, a level of diversion, that it's just going to happen. Given the fact that many patients probably do not want to smoke or are unable to smoke, I imagine that edibles are going to be a fairly large portion of the product. And given that this RMD is smack in the middle of numerous elementary schools as well as a high school, I'm concerned about exactly how you are going to regulate edibles, which have been shown to correlate with increased visits to the ER in every state where they are. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you. And Marilise. And after Marilise, we have Cheryl Snyder. Getting close to the end of our list here, folks, so if you do intend to speak, last call.
Good evening. My name is Marilise, and I am a Precinct 6 town meeting member. I live at 22 White Place, and I'm here largely to represent the concerns of the families on White Place. Perhaps the child who lives closest to the medical marijuana facility, it lives at 12 White Place, and their parents have approached me a couple of times on this subject with concerns, mostly based on what kind of influence the facility might have on the neighborhood and specifically on neighborhood children. So I would suggest that on page 4, where you talk about community relations and specific requirements, that be a little stronger. Not everybody reads the Brookline tab. You can't guarantee that the neighborhood will be aware of this community meeting. I would suggest that you add that the town meeting members of precincts 4, 5, and 6 be notified directly so that they can be in touch with their constituents. I agree with a former speaker who indicates that it's one thing to say that this shall not result in illegal redistribution, and then further on, shall not be a detriment to the surrounding area. But it is a little hard to make that happen to the satisfaction of the parents who are just really scared. So we all know that even prescription drugs that are dispensed at a pharmacy are abused. It would be hard to absolutely guarantee that medical marijuana won't also be abused, but the parents of children who are really just 100 feet away need to have their fears assuaged, and so any step that the licensing regulations can take in that direction would be very much appreciated.
Thank you, Marilise. Cheryl Snyder, and then Norton Arbala.
Cheryl Snyder. I actually live at 11 White Place. No offense to Marilise, but she does not represent my family in this matter. I'm the mother of a 17-year-old. I live on White Place. I live very near this building, and I don't know what the fuss is about, honestly. We have parking issues in this town. We have parking issues all over this town, And I would venture to guess that almost every single one of us goes to Trader Joe's on a fairly regular basis. There are a lot of parking issues at Trader Joe's, but I don't see anybody trying to regulate the number of people who go to Trader Joe's within a certain hour. Nor do I see them trying to stop Trader Joe's from changing the way their parking is. They had a big pile of snow in their parking lot for most of the last 2 months and still do, and several of their spaces are gone. But you know what? We're all still alive. I would also like to address the issue of diversion after sale. There are a lot of problems with a lot of things that are for sale in the world, not to mention many things that are not regulated at all, specifically some pretty bad foods, and also homopathic things that you can buy anywhere in the store, St. John's wort and all of those things that are very, very mildly regulated by anyone. Alcohol and cigarettes has already been mentioned here. I believe very strongly that there's not a lot more that needs to be done for medical marijuana than that, but I'd also like to bring up the fact that we don't seem to have a problem with trying to follow up on diversion of OxyContin or other narcotics, which are available by prescription and sold at CVS, Walgreens, and all sorts of other pharmacies throughout the state and throughout Brookline. Those things are highly, highly dangerous and addictive, as are cigarettes and the nicotine from cigarettes. I don't think that medical marijuana warrants the panic that we are currently going through. People can argue with me, but that's my feeling. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Cheryl. Norton, and then Gary, and I'm going to destroy your name here. Gary Corsica, thank you.
Good evening, Selectman DeWitt, Selectman Goldstein. My name is Norton Arbelas. I am New England. Hello, is that better? My name is Norton Arbelas. I am New England Treatment and Access Consultant for Standards and Practices. I think it's fair to say that these conditions are representative of best practices both in the state and nationwide. My commendation goes to Associate Town Counsel Patty Correa, who did a very thorough job of researching legal frameworks here in the Commonwealth, as well as in other jurisdictions and other states that have been facing this issue. Let's remember that this is a dual-use system in terms of the regulatory bodies. We are, at the same time, have oversight by the town of Brookline and its many departments, but also, and very importantly, by the Department of Public Health. And I couldn't disagree more wholeheartedly with some comments that we heard earlier concerning the substance of the DPH regulations. These are thoughtful regulations. These are thorough regulations. These are the regulations that have been designed to protect public safety and promote the public interest. We have worked long and hard over the last 2 years to create a regulatory framework here in Brookline that will achieve those goals, which are the same as NEDA's. Number 1, operational compliance, and number 2, patient care. We are a nonprofit for purposes of the state of Massachusetts, but we file as a for-profit corporation, and indeed, because of the IRS tax code, pay a tax rate of close to 60%. We are committed to paying our fair share to the town of Brookline. We are committed to being a responsible actor in the town, and more importantly, to fulfill our mission and the mandate of the voters, both of Brookline and of the Commonwealth, to provide safe and legal access to medical marijuana. The conditions are not arbitrary. The conditions are a result of many, many hours of deliberation, of hearings, and of really a complete framework that is intended to work hand in hand with the Department of Public Health. Let's not forget that we'll be back here in a year's time, and this is an annual renewal that we have for this license. So we get an opportunity to tweak it, we get an opportunity to fix any shortcomings or gaps that we may have, but more importantly, we are committed to the town. We are committed to the safety of our citizens. We are committed to the safety of our patients. I have worked with other municipalities. I have worked with other states. I have worked with other organizations. And I have yet to see an organization that is as dedicated to compliance, transparency, and patient care as New England Treatment Access. We thank you for your time. We thank you for your work. And we are committed to make the most of this opportunity on behalf of this town and of its patients. Thank you.
Thank you. Gary Gorsica. Patty, will you see if there's any further sign-ups? I know Mr. Levitan was indicating at minimum he has.
Hello? We ready?
Yeah, go right ahead, sir.
Oh, hi, my name is Gary Gorsica. I am from Rockport, Massachusetts, and I'm a former information technology person who lost his job, and I'm currently attending the Northeast Institute of Cannabis, and I'm hoping to get a job in the cannabis industry. And I think one of the important things to take into consideration is the job creation that you're creating for the state. But talking about the regulations for the licensing aspect, I know we briefly talked about item number 10, the home delivery aspect of it, and I still think it's important to have home delivery from a RMD and not from the manufacturing site, because you are going to, as far as the way I understand it, the way I've learned it in school, is you're going to be delivering packaged materials to patients at home. You're not going to be delivering unprocessed product. I could be wrong, but that's the way I understand it. That's the way I was taught in school. About some of the items 16 and 17, the public health and safety requirements. As this gentleman said over here, that there are very strict Mass Department of Public Health requirements, but I also want to let you know that all these products are being tested thoroughly. I've met all the representatives of all these testing companies. There's two of them out there, MCR Labs and ProVerity Laboratories, and the labeling is quite extensive. They use mass spectrometry. You know all 420 cannabinoids in the product. You know the level of the product. You know, it's incredible the labeling that you're going to see on these products. And then item number 24, in terms of accessing the dispensary, it says people without a valid registration card is prohibited, and I don't know if you know that there is a distinction, both patients and caregivers for patients. I don't know if you need to make that distinction in your regulations or not, but I think that's something important to point out. And item number 26, about the inspections. I was just wondering what sort of training the people doing the inspecting are going to have regarding the industry and the type of facility type related inspections they need to, you know, what they're going to be inspecting for, whether they're going to be inspecting for the, you know, contaminants, packaging, whatever. So I just wanted to point that out. I don't live in this town, but I do see that there's a traffic problem just getting here in the evening. And I looked at your very complicated site plan or whatever it was. It's like 50 pages of maps and stoplights and all that stuff. And not that my opinion matters, but I'm perfectly okay with there being appointments if that's an issue in terms of traffic, but that's just my opinion. But I want to let everybody know that the testing of the products and for contaminants and levels of THC and CBD and all the other cannabinoids is very extensive and thorough.
Thank you, sir. Fred Levitan, and then Abby Swain is the last one I have signed up.
Good evening. I'm Fred Levitan. I live on Beacon Street. Licensing conditions. I want to be sure that we don't jump the gun and ask for conditions that we don't ask in other businesses. I don't think it's fair, and I think we need to have a level playing field for everybody. So when we ask for off-site parking, to my knowledge, we've never asked for employees to have off-site parking in any business establishment in the town, and I'm curious why that's being done. I'm curious, but I think it's a good idea to have somebody who's trained in the automatic defibrillator and CPR. But then I think we should be doing that in drugstores where we have other patients coming in, and in medical practices or pharmacies or things like that. I'm not concerned too much about deliveries or appointments. I think it's better not to have appointments if we don't need to, and to let people come and go as they need. I don't think there should be a limit to the, like Newton did, to the amount that somebody can buy, because different people use the product in different methods. Some people cook with it, some make tinctures, some make oils, some make butter. And the only other thing is that to say that there's not going to be any diversion or redistribution, I think is just foolish, because it's going to happen. And we shouldn't be putting clauses in there that we set people up to fail. So we have language in here that says that the licensee, through their conduct or through their operation, there shall be no redistribution or no diversion of product. It's bound to happen. It's going to happen. So if you make your language like the way we've drafted it now, it looks like they're going to fail at that particular line item. Something we're going to have to look at, I guess, in a year's time. I thank you for your hard work.
Thank you, Fred. Abby Swain.
Hello. I wasn't planning to comment, but I was stimulated by the transportation demand management handout, so I'll just comment briefly on that. I live at 8 Emerson Street, which is at the corner of Emerson and Davis, and I'm on the Public Transportation Advisory Committee and was on the Transportation Board for 10 years, but I'm getting a little rusty on those issues, so I'll defer to Peter Ditto on all that. Under the goals of the Transportation Demand Management Plan, I noticed that it seems like they're estimating 1 vehicle trip per minute about at peak hours, but only demand for about 8 parking spaces, which seems, I have a hard time understanding that proportion. So I'm wondering, given the impacts that folks on Davis Street have experienced with congestion on Washington near Boylston and on Boylston, basically folks often circulate to avoid Route 9 because it becomes so backed up. I wonder if it makes sense to, in the monitoring plan, monitor not only the number of folks who are queuing to get into the driveway on Boylston, but those who jump the queue because they find that it's become too lengthy, and decide to just circle around the block instead, basically travel on west down Boylston, take a ride on Davis, come back east on Davis, take a ride on Cypress, come back east on Davis, and then just kind of circle to see if they can have another try at the parking lot. So there is precedent with other developments in the area for a set-aside for traffic calming should untoward consequences come to fruition, and perhaps we should just consider that as an option. I trust that if Todd Crane and the Transportation Board and Peter are involved in this process, that it will come out pretty well, but I just wanted to flag those elements.
Thank you very much. So that's all we have signed up for public comment. We did get a number of emails today. I know that every member of this committee got them, and a couple of letters as well. One person asked us to read the letter. I feel like if we read one, we're going to have to read them all. So for anybody who's waiting for their letter to be read, who's listening at home or here, trust that we are all seeing those letters, and we will all take them into consideration as we continue our deliberations. Thank you all for your very meaningful and well-spoken participation, and we look forward to making a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen very soon. Thank you.